This is Creating Consciousness, a podcast reflecting back to you the energies of your subconscious through tarot, channeling, and spiritual guidance. I'm Rebecca Weirman, intuitive, spiritual coach, and energy worker. You found this podcast because it's the next step in your healing journey. Together, we will explore the depths of your subconscious to awaken and welcome this consciousness.
Conscious creators, hi, hello, and welcome to Creating Consciousness, a spiritual and intuitive podcast for self-growth and development. I'm your host, Rebecca Weirman, founder of This Consciousness Intuitive Healing. Not only am I a spiritual coach, podcaster, and intuitive healer, I am also a squishy, flawed human. And what I'm trying to say by this is that no matter what information I share on the podcast, I always encourage you to do your own research. Because if we're just taking things at face value when people share them, we're not really going deep. And we are really just allowing people to influence us on a surface level. I mean, how many times have you regurgitated quote unquote facts just to be disproven, but you haven't done any research on it? You're just regurgitating things you've heard on a podcast before. Yeah, I've done the same thing. And when I noticed myself doing that, with me being a podcast host, I think it was really important for me to share with my beautiful community that I am not all-knowing, that I am flawed, just like every other person on this planet, and that we all have different perspectives, and that mine isn't the only truth. There are so many people out there with amazing perspectives, some not so amazing perspectives, but spirituality is really finding what works for you. This podcast might not be it, and I take no offense to that because the people who are spiritually bypassing probably aren't going to come to Creating Consciousness and fall in love with the content. But the people who are more secure in grounded spirituality and who like science and who like speaking politics are probably going to really enjoy this podcast. But that doesn't mean one person is better than the other. So I just wanted to take time here to address this, to acknowledge it, and to further promote researching or diving deeper into some of the topics that we talk about because, again, I am just another human being. So many people have different versions of spirituality, and it is not my place to judge your version of spirituality. Whether you come to me as a client or just as a podcast listener, whether you are conspiracy-based or you're not, I'm not going to judge that. However, I do not align with conspiracy theory sentiments. And that's just because my perspective of spirituality is really grounded. It is multidimensional, but I am fully surrendered into this human experience. And for me, I don't think the human experience is about uncovering all of the darkness that could exist in the universe. It's about uncovering the darkness within the self to help transcend and create this ripple effect out. You know, it's about being concerned with yourself, because if we're too concerned with the lives of other people, we're really not creating a safe space or a safe container for us to grow and flow within. And so that's something I am trying to keep in mind as I continue creating this podcast, as I continue to share my consciousness with the collective, and as I open myself up more to the consciousness of others. Something I've also realized is that it's really not okay for me to say that if you don't want to listen to political talk, that this podcast isn't for you. Because again, every person's version of spirituality is different, but my version of spirituality is scientific and political. So we will be having those conversations. The reason why I have said that in the past is because when podcast community members come together, I want everyone to feel safe, and I'm going to be opening up my free little community again, and I want everyone to feel safe. And if people don't feel safe, there's no point in bringing us together as a community. And so that's why I don't want someone entering the community of this podcast, of Creating Consciousness, and sharing racist or transphobic rhetoric. I want this to be a space of love and compassion. And we are totally good with informed conversations and listening to different perspectives, because that in itself is spiritual. But this is not a place of hate. And so I apologize for saying that this is not a podcast for you, but please understand that my sentiment behind it is to create a very safe container for those who are wanting to learn, for those who are showing up in this space to be in community with others. And that is why I had said those things. So I just wanted to share that awakened thought that I had. But again, my biggest concern is the safety element. Now, I have a few more announcements, and I know this intro is already long, so I apologize for that too. But if you have ever received anything from this podcast, whether it be like a little nugget of wisdom or one of the readings just really resonated with you, or you fell in love with a guest, or you found your next spiritual practitioner, please let us know by leaving a 5-star rating and review in the iTunes store. And know that you can also get a free oracle card reading from me when you leave a 5-star rating and review. All you have to do is take a screenshot of your 5-star rating and review and email it to me, Rebecca@thisconsciousness.com, or you could send it to me on Instagram @thisconsciousness or @Creating Consciousness Pod. However, I would say email's the best route because I'm on a little social media detox at this time. I also have some offerings coming up that I wanted to share with you. The first is going to be a virtual journey to the Akashic Records. This is a ceremony that I hold once a month, and each month the theme changes. So as we've been working with it before, we've been dealing with our soul's purpose. But as we dive into this ceremony on August 19th at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we will be focusing on past lives. So we will be going through a regression to take us back to our past life state so we can learn more about our past lives and how our past life trauma is affecting us in our current incarnation. All the tickets for that virtual event can be found in the show notes or by visiting www.thisconsciousness.com and clicking book now. That will be there for you. All the tickets are on a sliding scale, so you can pay full price or you could pay almost half off just based on your needs. I would love to have you. It is such an incredible ceremony. All my clients who have done it have loved it and have gained amazing insight from it. And you don't need any psychic experience. You will receive information. It is fascinating. You can also use code SHADOW for 20% off one of my energy healing sessions. And I also recommend you check out my intuitive healing containers while you are at it. And last, but certainly not least, before we dive into the juicy goodness that is today's episode, I wanted to share that I was recently interviewed on one of my friend Lauren Ivy's podcast. Her podcast is called Open to Alchemy. And on the episode that I did with her, we spoke all about the shadow work, what it is, how to do it, and a little bit about my healing journey, my story, what it took to get me to where I am now, and the things I'm looking forward to and excited about down the road. So if you're interested in learning more, especially about the intuitive healing containers, definitely head on over to Lauren Ivy's Open to Alchemy podcast, and I will link that in the show notes as well. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Lily, the Quantum Guide. Hi, Lily. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi there. How's it going?
I'm so happy you're here. What you do is incredible. It's fascinating. I have binged your TikToks, I have binged your Instagram videos, and now I am so happy to just geek out over the quantum world with you.
I'm so excited too. No, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for all that. I do the same with your content, just so you know.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I love all your stuff and just so happy to be here.
I feel the love. So, you've listened to the podcast before, so you know how
Yes.
things go. I always love to start talking about people's spiritual identity.
hmm
Share with me your spiritual identity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that sometimes, like I was listening to one of your podcasts this morning as well. So, sometimes people like to answer with their zodiac signs or like, you want go into sign and um, further, things like that. Even when we meet people, a lot of the time too, we'll sometimes throw those things out. It's definitely becoming more of a topic. But for me, it's more just like the concept of multidimensionality and really a lot that pretty much everything that I do, or just embracing that side of me is my spiritual identity, and definitely comes through with my work and working with other lifetimes and dimensions and things like that. But just looking at life, and yes, um in a frame or lens of multidimensionality and limitlessness in a way. And then also too, what I think of when I think of my spiritual identity is my childlike wonder in a sense. And I always go to what resonated with me as a kid, what I'm passionate about as a child. And for me, it was art. I loved art always. I was always creating, drawing, fashion too. I loved fashion design and just like draping my Barbies and togas and just always just draping myself in fabrics and things and creating in that sense. And so art and creation has always been a part of my life since I was a kid. And I always, remember thinking that to myself. And art's really how I found it's how I left the corporate world and found this path. So yeah, multidimensionality and um, like what I was passionate about as a kid, I really draw and channel a lot of that into my work and how I live. As it makes me very happy and what I'm passionate about. Passion is huge for me too. Going towards my passions, encouraging others to do the same. Um, Going towards what magnetically pulls you and just going for it, so yeah, I could go on and on and on, but multidimensionality and that essence of um childlike wonder and your true passions really is what speaks to me as a spiritual being, if that makes
Oh my
sense.
gosh, it makes complete sense. And I think it's so brilliant because, yeah, like you said, we always share our zodiac signs, our human design, whatever else. But the way I take what you just shared, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's this concept of more so core values within your spirituality that help identify you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, totally. And the reason why too is I guess I'm not so I just don't have the knowledge of. I have great sisters and friends and people I look up to who are so knowledgeable on human design or astrology or even other concepts and other modalities that are becoming super relevant and or just interesting and to me. But I know people that don't necessarily know their birth time, right? Or maybe they were adopted or don't have their birth certificate or something happened. Even you, I think you had a situation, right? Like
Yeah.
you had a situation where it was, well, tell me what happened again. Like the birth time was, you thought it was something
Yeah,
else.
I was always told I was born at 10:35. My birth certificate doesn't have the birth time, but when I was moving, I found my baby scrapbook and my birth time said 10:05 written in, and I immediately, like my heart sank, immediately go to my phone to check my birth time, and it changed my chart. And I had this identity crisis. So, oh,
I remember seeing you post this or in an email or something. And I'm like, yes, that is why. Like that was the moment why I'm like, yeah, because people I'm really close with have they just don't know. And so I'm like, well, if I'm to like check how our charts are, I can't. So like what do you do then in that moment? Right? Like what if you didn't know? And that's kind of the concept. That's like the thing that interests me about all this is like, what if you didn't know your three signs or like, or for some reason couldn't find out, then like what speaks to you? Then who are you?
Yeah.
Or like, how do you feel? Like, what is it how does it, what are you drawn to? That's kind of just, I'm like, what are you drawn to? That's my thing. Although I absolutely love astrology. I love learning about it. And I do know my own, birth time. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I have had my chart done, and it's so profound. And then the wisdom and depth of knowledge and human design too blows my mind. I didn't even know what that was until, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago. So such fabulous, profound knowledge from all that, but just from the perspective of what if you couldn't know?
And I think you make a great point too, because some of the times and in my case, for example, we get so caught up in what that spiritual identity is that we lose
Mm-hmm.
sight of ourselves and what is true to us.
Mm-hmm.
When I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was triple air, Libra, Gemini, Gemini, I paraded around like this airy bitch. And when I found out, oh, I'm actually Libra, Gemini with a Taurus rising, I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense because I'm not this floaty bitch I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretending to be. I felt this return to self, but so many people with the wrong birth time or whatever can get caught up, or they want to be more like the stereotype of another sign that they lean into that.
And it also shows you how powerful the mind is, right? Like that's
Yes.
the concept here, is that our minds are so powerful, and I can absolutely get caught up in my mind. That's something that again really interested me about consciousness, and getting a hold of your consciousness and not getting too caught up in it and too caught up in the headiness. And because that's me, it has
Mhm.
been me. um so yeah, how powerful our minds are, and how if we think we're three signs, or if we think we're one sign, or like before I knew that there were even, the big three, right?
Right.
When you think you're just your sun sign, because I just didn't know, right? And you really identify with that sign, you're like, oh well, I found out my other two, and that makes more sense now. Okay, I get it. And then furthermore, becoming very advanced in astrology, and I'm sure it's a whole huge realm that is that I'm only just discovering. So yeah, just another thought there of the mind being so powerful.
I just have to break the fourth wall for a second here
Yes.
and just let the listeners know that they are in for such a freaking treat with this episode because I am already covered in goosebumps.
Oh, I'm loving this. No, I'm loving this too. This is so amazing. I'm just so grateful for you. And it's part of, this is part of my healing process. I, for a long time, have been just so nervous, or just like so scared to share, and so scared to
Mhm.
talk about these things. So, thank you for providing me with this gift, this great gift of sharing and, healing in my own way. Yeah,
And thank you for doing the same for me. I
of
mean, I've
course.
expressed it on this podcast before. Being able to have this platform is so healing for someone just
Mm-hmm.
like you who's gone through those same things. And we have a oh my gosh. So, well, I knew of Lily years ago when our paths intersected. I was working for a law firm where Lily's partner plays in a band with the owner of that firm's son.
Mm-hmm.
We met well, I believe we did meet at a concert, one of those shows,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
we never spoke again. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
about your crystal work, your quantum healing. You didn't know about me. It was just that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've come together and we're in the same field. And it's just crazy because we both left the corporate world to
Mm-hmm.
do what we love. And you said that art was a big
Mm-hmm.
factor in you
Mm-hmm.
leaving the corporate world. So please go ahead and share your journey with us to how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Art helped me to leave the corporate world. It was actually glass art, more specifically. So, um, I was in the corporate world. In college, went to business school. I double majored in supply chain management and marketing, and pursued a career in supply chain management at first. And then, after doing that for a bit, in risk management logistics, I decided to explore marketing a bit. And while working at a marketing firm, I just started taking these glass classes. I had taken glass classes. My mom put me in fused glass classes when I was like in 7th or 8th grade. So really young. Yeah. She found this like great place, and I just took to it really easily, I guess, or just, I don't know. It was really easy for me to pick up. And they also taught me how to do some metal smithing and a bit of, wire wrapping and metalworking and all kinds of fabulous things. And I was making jewelry. And so I remembered I just loved it so much. But high school and college takes over, and then the corporate world, yes, I was consumed in that, but I did have time on the weekends, and after work to pursue my passions more. There wasn't homework, and I wasn't filled with all these extracurriculars. So I decided to take up glass classes while I was working, this corporate job. And, I took to it, as an adult, took to it quickly again and just started really creating pieces and getting my groove, and started an Instagram. I just went for it and started sharing my pieces and was able to grow this account organically and got all these orders, and was kind of in this space where I was like, well, do I keep doing this corporate job or do I try this? Do I try fulfilling these orders and just, continuing to grow my business and try something new? And so with the support of my love and my partner, he was like, yeah, just like, let's do it. Just go for it, because he pursues his passion so fully, and he inspires me so much and completely activated me on my journey, and woke me up to people, you can follow your passions. That's a thing, and you can make a career out of it. You can make a life out of it. And so I did it. And so I left the corporate world, and that was the one and only time I'd ever I guess quit a job in that way. And so I just went for it and built that, and then did that for a few years and was creating every day, throwing myself into my work. And funny enough, I became I guess specialized in vortex marbles. So these vortex pieces that literally look like portals, right? They have this like 3D effect. If you hold them a certain angle, they look like they're going through your hand with this like optic lens, and they're really cool. And of course they were, I guess, foreshadowing the portal work that I do now, right?
Oh.
And so yeah, getting some chills over here too. So yeah. So yeah, just I went into the glass world, started creating these vortex marbles and collaborating with artists and just really finding my flow. That's when I really discovered like true flow state. Musicians talk about it, athletes, artists, right? Channelers, my goodness, that flow state. And I'm a pretty clumsy person, actually a very clumsy person, or I used to be, and still have my moments. And but with glass, I never hurt myself, not once, never burnt myself. And I'm working with a live flame. I'm, doing very dangerous things, and just was always blessed for that glass journey. But then, after a couple years, my grandma got very sick, and I'm very close with her. And she and my mom raised me, and so she had this accident where she had a brain bleed, and it completely affected her consciousness so negatively. I'd never seen this before. However, it woke me up to consciousness, right? And my grandmother is still with us. She's almost 100 years old. So that was like, I don't know, 4 years ago she had this accident.
Wow.
But it woke me up, and she's been in recovery, and she still has battles with her consciousness today. But to see this journey that she's had has taught me so much. And so that really woke me up. I wasn't able to create glass creatively. I was completely I couldn't create. I had to, really, throw myself into a state of reflection. And that's when I found QHHT and BQH and quantum healing and this whole world that I had no idea existed. Even meditation, I just didn't realize that people used meditation as such a tool for relaxing their consciousness in a way, or just connecting to their consciousness. It seems so simple, right? And so silly. But if I had some of these tools that I had now when I was in college, or even, in high school and grade school, like I would, have struggled much less.
Yeah.
with my nerves, with my anxieties. I used to, so without getting too far off, that's really how art and also my grandmother really got me on this path, leaving the corporate world and coming where I am now, really.
How soon after was it discovering all these amazing modalities that you dove into beyond quantum healing, or BQH, as you'll hear us refer to it throughout the episode?
It was at the end of 2018, or maybe like October, I want to say 2018. It's like fall time 2018. And I think my grandmother, maybe she got sick, maybe 6 months, many months before, maybe even a year. Maybe it took me a year to become certified. I don't know. I'd have to like look back in things, but maybe it was 6 months, maybe it was a few months. I don't know. But regardless, it was a lot of research. I remember consuming, probably months of just researching before I decided to get my certification, whether it be just like lectures, Dolores Cannon lectures, or finding just other small creators on YouTube, just talking about this content, talking about their work, streaming their regression sessions. I thought that was fascinating. I'm like, wow, people do this. Like there's like people are doing this past life regression hypnosis work, and they're like posting these sessions on YouTube. It was fascinating to me, the journeys people were having, the healing that was occurring. And I just felt like that magnetic pull, that call, just felt so called to do it. So yeah, as far as timelines, I'd have to look at dates exactly, but that was the flow of the actions, I guess you could say, of the timeline.
It's interesting how so many of us are propelled into our spiritual paths, usually resulting from a death, a divorce, or a breakup, or like some sort of like mystery trauma or illness.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very interesting. And of course I didn't get it at the time, like when it happens, but I don't know if that hadn't happened, I'd probably still be creating glass, you know what I mean? Like if it hadn't happened, and it's taught my I have a really large family. It's taught my family and my mom so much, and I've just seen so much growth. And even still, I'm sure I'm going to see so much growth as she transitions. And, she, my grandmother, I love chatting with her. And when she does have, she has bad days, she has good days, but she she'll see, she'll see things in the spirit realm. She's seeing that realm, and many doctors and nurses, and I have many doctors in the family, and who actually deal with patients who cross over, who are exiting this realm. And so it's a thing. They talk about when you do become that wise woman or wise man, that just, you sometimes you see into the other realms. And so my grandmother is going through that process too. And it's very interesting for me and my family to see that side of energy and consciousness too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's truly incredible. And it's crazy too how people get to that point where they are seeing that and they get labeled some medical term.
Oh, I know.
Because that's happening.
Yes.
We don't even have to get into that, because that's what the whole episode will become.
Right. But I'm sure everyone who's listening to is on the vibe of
agree.
What you and I are thinking. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, tell us more about what Beyond Quantum Healing is, because I am fascinated by this.
Beyond Quantum Healing, or BQH, for the acronym, is a service to others, heart-centered modality, and it can be described in a variety of ways. But I like to say that it's a heart-centered service to others modality that focuses upon or utilizes rather past life regression and hypnosis techniques, also offering the flexibility of virtual sessions and the flexibility of practitioners to also incorporate their other modalities. So if they have other certifications or other knowledge, they can incorporate that into this practice to make for an optimal session and experience for our clients. So in essence, I've mentioned, past life regression and hypnosis techniques, but in essence, it's essentially a guided meditation, a very, very deep guided meditation, the actual journey aspect of the session, where we are slowing the brain waves, essentially slowing those brain waves into that of a dreamlike state where you're able to tap in and communicate with your, you can call it your higher self, your highest self, your subconscious, other aspects of your consciousness, many labels to talk about the energies and things, but achieving this dreamlike state through verbal prompts, guided imagery, in essence, a guided, very, very deep, relaxing guided meditation. And yeah, connecting to these other aspects of yourself for guidance regarding anything really. You come to these sessions with questions that you wish to ask your highest self and consciousness and receive these answers with the help of me asking those questions. So, in essence, too, where a practitioner or guide can help is asking questions. That's what we do. So we're going to this deep meditative dreamlike state and asking these questions. Because if you're doing a meditation by yourself, it's a little hard to ask yourself questions and answer. And that's where a practitioner comes in. We're able to get you to this relaxed meditative state and ask you questions that you've created to receive your own answers. Kind of like asking yourself questions, right? And we facilitate that question asking, also uncovering the stories of the lifetimes that may come up or energies that may come up. And each session is completely unique as well. Whatever, from my experience, my clients have been meant to see, they see in that specific moment. It's all very, very unique to the client.
I have so many questions for you from that because it's just such a fascinating process. And I find it interesting that this episode is coming after I just spoke with Sydney Cutler of Ananda Meditation, because in that episode, we spoke a lot about the different brainwave states. And here we are moving into a new modality that also takes you to that theta and delta state where you're accessing the unconscious mind. So through that guided meditation, through the hypnosis, I just want to confirm with you that we are in the theta and delta states.
Correct. Yes. That's what we're going for. Absolutely. That's our intention. Something that I've been called actually too is to incorporate maybe even some music or binaural beats or just other aspects. That's something I'm playing around with and incorporating. I know practitioners definitely already do that. Just another way, other ways to help you achieve that state.
Yeah, the binaural beats definitely help, especially if you have a hard time dropping in.
Right.
So when someone is being led through this hypnosis, this regression, this meditation, this process, what comes up? I know it's different for everyone, but what energies, what entities? I'm sure there are so many things.
So many things. And that's one of the many reasons I love this work and I'm so drawn to this work is because I'm just so drawn to so many lifetimes, so many cultures, so many frequencies. Like I'm drawn to it all. And working with clients, I get to see it all. Right. I get to experience the depth of it all. So yes, I like to say that typically, not always, but typically, and it's also been, increasingly, we've discovered themes. Usually a couple of lifetimes are experienced in the beginning of the session. So not always, but sometimes these energies will come up in the form of lifetimes. And so, they may experience 1 or 2, 3 lifetimes. Sometimes I've noticed even clients are shown just scenes of a lifetime quickly, and then they go. It's like I call it lifetime hopping, where they're just like shown so many lifetimes just to receive kind of smaller messages from many, many lifetimes, as opposed to going really deep into 1 or 2. That sometimes happens, but it can be lifetimes. It can also be spirit guides. Sometimes a spirit guide will start off the session, will greet the client and have something to say. It can be collectives, cosmic, galactic collectives. That's been a huge theme that's been coming up for my clients and those that, I don't know, just people who've been seeking out my work in particular. I've just noticed that almost every single person has some sort of cosmic something that comes through in their session, whether it be a lifetime or a guide or a message or something. And I loved the episode that you created about your cosmic experience.
Oh, yeah.
So fascinating. So without getting too off track and talking about all the things that is absolutely something that could also be experienced, kind of like your encounter. Something similar like that could be experienced. Something we explore as well in these sessions are encounters or dreams and things as well. So it can be anything. It can be guides, angels. We've had elementals, ETs, of course, like I said, the cosmic, galactic lineages. Even like something really interesting that happened this week where these concept of these like these original I guess creations, these kind of like the gods, when we think Egyptian gods, these beings that are half human, half animal, really. And so sometimes my clients will experience that where they are that type of being of mythology. So yeah, it can be anything and everything. Also just pure consciousness. Quite frequently clients will just experience, and they think that at the beginning they think it's not working, right? They think they're not where they need to be. They're like, well, I'm not in nothingness. And I'm like, well, good. That's where you want to be. And some people call it the void. There's different places, but sometimes my clients just will experience being pure consciousness and in the universe or in the stars, so that's also something as well, just energy beings, and what that's like as well.
Oh my gosh, I need to book a session with you.
Yeah.
My mind is just blown because, so many people go their entire lives wanting to learn more about their past lives, or I guess parallel lives, because we'll get into that time thing.
Correct.
But you can do it. And it's as simple as lying on your back. Like, I think the theme for the podcast in the past couple of weeks is it's simple. All you have to do is just go to this place of surrender and receive. So that's so fascinating. I do want to talk about time.
Yes.
Because oh my gosh, we're gonna get into this. But time, when we look at it on a very human level, it's linear. But when we expand our consciousness beyond our physical 3-dimensional world, time shifts. Space and time shift. Things are different. So how does this play into beyond quantum healing?
Sure. There are many, many facets. First, something kind of simply to think about is just how clients perceive time during the session. So, like when they experience the journey, when they go to the actual journey part, we do a lot of preparation before and we do some grounding afterwards. But in the actual journey, all time and space is kind of, you do surrender to that. And so when they kind of come out of it, so time just feels very different. You can tell, I guess, so by certain things that they say, that time feels like it's moved at a different pace than normal, if the normal waking state, right? So, and it can also be an explanation of like time slips and things like that people talk about and experience as well. But also just speaking of time in terms of these lifetimes, right? And what is a past life? Is it really a past life if all time is happening now and these things? And one perspective or theory is that we experience these lifetimes not in a linear fashion, right? So we may have had these quote unquote past lives. Maybe one was in the Renaissance, and another was in ancient, Greece, when the Spartans in 300 was happening. I mean, these different time periods, but they're not experienced in that linear state. So, also time comes into play when I suppose we're selecting the lifetimes that we're going to live or experience with our consciousness and be present for. So, I guess there's various ways to look at time when it comes to these sessions and just the concept of quote unquote past lives. But I love how you said parallel lives, because that absolutely becomes more of a way to look at it, right? These are all parallel. They're all happening now. And also something about time that's very unique, or maybe just unique, to my experience, more unique to my sessions recently. I'm sure many, many practitioners experience this, but is that my clients have been experiencing, or some of them have been experiencing, maybe they don't go to a past life, but they go to their present life they're experiencing now, just into the future.
Hmm.
So they're being shown different future timelines, shall we say, right?
I love
And
that.
maybe they're shown this future timeline. I'm thinking of a client in particular, a friend who she saw a project completed, a project she had, been wanting to create, and really something that she'd been wanting to do, and that she could also use to create even more things with her business. And so she saw this creation already come to fruition, and before she had even started the project in this present life. So it can show you, just maybe it can inspire you, can give you ideas,
Mm.
and maybe that's why I so love this work as an artist too,
Yeah.
because after all, where does creative inspiration come from? I think that artists and musicians are such powerful channels, in
Oh,
my
yeah.
opinion. And so, it all relates. There's so much overlap to it all. But yeah, future timelines and uh, future things, even of events and things, is very, very interesting too. So that can also come up in these sessions. Absolutely.
I think it's so easy for people, myself included, to look at God, source, spirit, the universe, whatever you want to call this higher power,
Mm-hmm.
and realize that they are omnipresent, that they can
Mm-hmm.
be anywhere and everywhere. But when we
Mm-hmm.
ourselves take
Mm-hmm.
ourselves out of the 3D and expand our consciousness, we have that same omnipresent ability. We are the exact same. We are gods with amnesia. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is our job to wake up
Mm-hmm.
to our godlike abilities, to our
Mm-hmm.
omnipresent abilities. And I think that's scary to so many people. And especially when you're going into
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
state of surrender, not knowing what is coming up or what could come up, and the programming we have from horror movies and scary movies, I think some people might be scared about what they could learn. When people go into this state for BQH, are they safe?
Absolutely. And that's an intention that not only do we set from the very start, just the core of my intention of this work that I do. But yeah, and another addition to it is kind of common hypnosis myths. So I guess I could bring it that way. I could talk about safety in many levels, but depending on which way you want to take it,
Mhm.
even just the thought of like hypnosis, right? And like you brought up, programming, and even just, Hollywood, whatever, you think of being hypnotized with like a man with a watch, right? Or on a string or whatever that it's called, like a pocket
Right.
watch, and go, you're being very sleepy, right? That's not, that's not what this is. It's just it's shown kind of in a mystical, almost like in a way where someone can control you and like all this stuff, and that's simply not
Mhm.
this work. You're fully in control. The client is fully in control. Furthermore, many of my clients find it very interesting when they drop into that space how comfortable it is, and how it's not other channelers that I've spoken to, it's a more kind of floating into it, easing into the space, as opposed to channeling abruptly, like just as something that I've talked about with some of my friends that have channeled, which is a kind of a beautiful way to describe it. It is absolutely floating into that space of surrender and flow, yet my client is always in full control. And a common, I guess, hypnosis myth is kind of being out of control, and that person has full control of you. And that's just not what it is. Because I do all of my sessions virtually, I guess one other fear that will sometimes come up of safety is like, what if we get disconnected, right? And you're in that state, and like I'm not there, like we can't get connected back. There's little other protocols and things that I do to we can continue on the phone or other devices and things like that. But say I tell my clients this, I say all of the grid went down when we were facilitating this session, right? Say all of internet globally like went down, right?
Yeah.
You would still be completely and 100% safe. Your consciousness would be safe. And it's described as this, say we were disconnected, or say we were doing a session in person, say I just left, or I had an illness that I would just had to leave. I had to go, take care of myself for the day. And you were, the client was just left in that state. It's just a dreamlike state. You would wake up simply as if you had been in a dream or a meditation. So it's not, like you said before, it's not that programming. It's not that scary space of, you're getting very sleepy and control. That's not the space we're going to. And that's certainly not the intention. The intention is of protection and to only work with the highest, most divine, beings and energies, and you're working with yourself, in essence. So there's nothing to be afraid of. You're working with you. You have all the answers inside of yourself. I like to say, and I've had, clients describe this as well, is that, we all have the answers that we're looking for right inside of ourselves. Sometimes just the programming and the 3D and the worries and the fears and the stuff from so many things that we're just not even aware of necessarily in our consciousness, the programs, right? That we have to unprogram. This is a way to help unprogram those programs, right?
Mm-hmm. I just want to thank you for taking the time to explain all of that, because when we do this work, whether it's BQH or intuitive healing or whatever it may be, the whole point is love and intention and safety and healing, right? So there's, we're not playing with the devil. Oh gosh, don't even get me started. Like, I don't believe in the devil. Yeah, I don't believe in demons, but I will say that, like, you do anything too much, it can become your demon.
Yeah, same. I'm sure we have lots of the same beliefs. Yes.
Right.
And it's also like labels too, right? Like it's like the names, fears and name. Like there's so many labels, and I've always been the kind of person that, of course, you have to label things to talk about things, but like being more open with perspectives and energies, and not everything was what we were taught in storybooks.
Amen. It's not all rainbows and butterflies. It's not all Disney princess movies.
Right. Or it's just even a different perspective. It's just a different perspective. Even the perspective of witches and how they're depicted, right? It's just all about perspective.
Something that does make me curious about BQH is the idea of old souls and new souls. And now this is just me probably being a little jaded, but when I hear someone say, "Oh, you're such an old soul," I'm like, that's my trauma. Thank you. But when someone is a newer soul or a new soul and they go into this state to learn more about their past lives, parallel lives, future lives, whatever, what happens?
I don't know if I've necessarily had, and it's something that I haven't had the client want to ask, but maybe it's something I could, I guess, include, and this could spark, me including it in my sessions going forward, is if people want to know if they're an old soul or a new soul, because this brings the concept of, I believe Dolores Cannon was the one that was one of the revolutionaries, if not the first person to bring this concept and theory about, it's the concept and theory of like imprinted lifetimes, imprinted past life memories for first time souls. Meaning, okay, so say we're in a current state of the world, and Dolores spoke of this, right? Current state of the world, there's a lot going on, right? Ascension, call it many labels for this, call it awakening, ascension, the event, whatever you want to call it. But that, this is a time where new first time souls are needed for many reasons, right? But to spread light, to inspire, many, many different reasons. And what those first time souls will look like is leaving, source energy directly and coming to earth, not having experienced any other lifetimes prior. And so you can imagine that would be a very jarring experience, right? So to prevent such a shock or a crazy, a shock, right, getting here, there's a way to, or there's a theory of a way to imprint these lifetimes before incarnation. So for new souls, so that they can have maybe skills or be more prepared energetically for, like you said, some of the traumas that can occur on earth, or just the frequencies, things they might not be used to, right? Coming from pure source light and bliss and that pure energy to going to a 3D world, having these imprinted lifetime memories can is a theory that that she presents, right? And it makes sense to me with my work that I've been doing when I see similarities between lifetimes, meaning like you'll see maybe one or two people that experience a very similar, almost like an imprint lifetime that was like, huh, that was a lifetime very, very similar, if not the exact same, to another client. So that's just something that's been floating around in the back of my head to explore more, these thought of imprinted lifetimes and how to explore that in my sessions. Maybe offering it to clients as that's something that they want to know if they're a first time soul, or just how their I guess how their past lifetimes the going deeper and uncovering more in regard to that. But yeah, that's just a perspective on first time souls and some information about that. I haven't had too much experience. It's not like I've had a ton of people coming to me that are first time souls and all this information's flowing through. However, it's something that I'm definitely excited to explore.
When you mentioned first time, like new souls, first time on Earth, my mind immediately was like, oh, Aquarians. I'm like, okay, I get that. It seems like a similar energy.
Totally. And like I said even before, there's probably such wisdom and being able to look at someone's chart in accordance to these past life experiences, right? And seeing the overlaps and parallels would be extremely interesting and very beneficial. So yeah, something to explore for absolutely for me and anyone else out there to explore in the future. But yeah, Aquarians, or even like that's something that's crosses my mind sometimes too, or at least like when I was years ago kind of just exploring this stuff, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so drawn to this culture and that culture. And once you start learning about cosmic consciousness, there's certain ones that really resonate and pull you more than others, depending on where you are in your journey. At least that's what it's been like for me. And so
same.
So yeah, so I don't know. Sometimes I've thought that too, but then I'm like, well, do I have imprinted lifetimes, all these things that I love? Do I not? For me, I don't really, it doesn't really matter. I just love it all. Whether it's an imprinted lifetime, whether it's a real lifetime, whether, whatever the theory and concept I'm exploring is, I just love it. I love pondering these things. And it's probably why I feel, I just love exploring these spaces with my clients, because I don't know, it just fills my soul.
You can learn so much just about yourself through a BQH session. It's sounding like you can also just like do it for fun, but what really moves the needle is the healing element. So how can BQH help people heal from their traumas and conditionings?
So many of my clients and those that seek out this work, right, are usually typically in my experience, leaders, or they're community leaders, or they're trying to do, they have missions that they're trying to achieve, right? And they're wanting to really get to the root of things so that they can achieve their mission fully, right? And they want to do what they came here to do. And so these sessions are great to uncover facets of that, and of course to heal in combination. And so I have some of my favorite clients to work with are, or just most intriguing, I suppose, or some that really intrigue me, are those that come with different maybe medical things that the doctors, or their doctors, or the medical industry are just stumped with, whether it be like a skin thing or a digestive issue or whatever it is, And so I find those cases to be very fascinating, just to see what's uncovered in the session, right? The origins of those, that inflammation, or how it's not always past life related. Sometimes it can be things in the present life, right? But just going to that deep state where you can uncover things about your body, remember things things about your body. You do know, we're all so intuitive. And another thing I like to say too is that in these sessions, and we're all channels, right? But in these sessions, you're able to be your own channel, and I just help you become your own channel and receive whether it be information or actual healing frequencies. That'll sometimes happen. We do a body scan portion, usually towards the end of these sessions. Sometimes it'll happen at the beginning if clearing needs to happen before we go deep. But we'll do these body scans energetically. And trauma can be stored in places in the body, whether it be from other lifetimes or, like I said, this present lifetime, earlier in this lifetime, from experiences. And so we address these things, and we're able to look at them from a different perspective, receive guidance in a different perspective. A lot of the times my clients will receive information within the session, and at the end of the session, we'll have a grounding portion and a conversation at the end. And I'll say, hey, were you expecting XYZ bit of information, whether it be about healing or something else to come through? And, more times than not, I'd say 9 out of 10 times, or 9 out of 10 times, they say, no, I wasn't expecting that information to come through, or I was like, whoa, would have never thought that. So that's the stuff that I really love too, is that it's just a different way to find another perspective, from yourself, so yeah, and it can be related to healing on the physical level, on the, emotional, on the astral level. I like to say, all levels and all time and space and dimensions and lifetimes and all of it. I like to be very clear with the words that I use to make sure it's all encompassing when we do these healing portions. But yeah, essentially you're healing yourself. I'm not doing any of the healing. My clients are healing themselves. They're receiving their own healing information. And sometimes too, we'll receive information that will be guidance for them to incorporate and integrate after the session. That happens, all the time, the bulk of the time. So hearing, what types of foods would be most beneficial to maybe help that inflammation and things like this for that specific client, is very interesting and intriguing to see come through as well.
It's so interesting that you bring up perspective a lot. And I love it, because a lot of healing is rooted in just shifting your perspective about how it affects you. And that goes back to what you mentioned at the very beginning, how powerful the mind is. So when we can see something from a more cosmic or quantum level, it's really interesting how things can subtly start shifting around us. But then again, the integration piece you mentioned seems like it's probably one of the most important elements. Yes, we can learn so much and receive all these cool informations and meet these cool entities and elementals while we're in this delta state. But it's when we come back to that beta state when we need to start applying what we've learned to promote further healing.
Definitely. The integration process is hugely important and key, if not the most important part, right? And that's part of that integration process is listening to the session. So that's also, the thing you mentioned, that I share clips from these sessions on my social medias, and I record all of these sessions. They're recorded for my clients, done, all proprietary. All the information is theirs and theirs alone. If they choose that they ever want to share these clips, then they let me know. But yeah, I hold that very, very important. That comes from my risk management background, But yeah, so we do record these sessions so that my clients can listen back to all of the information, experience these sessions, even months, years down the line. There's a plethora of ways to integrate the information, but even just listening to the sessions later on is super helpful, and can, downloads and just thought-provoking things can come at any time you listen to them. So that's something really cool, and that I love. I love the aspect of having that session forever, and also, integrating the information that comes through, because sometimes my clients will think that they remember everything from the session, but even me, I'm fully in my waking state for the session. I don't even remember what I said at the first, an hour and a half or 2 hours or however long it's been, because these sessions can last that long. And so allowing this recording to facilitate that integration, whether you think you remember everything or didn't, it's a great space and I guess tool to have to utilize as well.
I think that's incredibly important because there's so many times I've watched back a session and I've had this just massive ping that sends me in a completely different direction. And I'm like, oh, how did I miss that the first time? Good thing I'm watching this back and open and listening to it with a fresh set of ears and eyes and allowing myself to be present.
Totally. And sometimes the sessions will be so intense and such a download, or however you want to say it, so intense for my clients that they might not feel ready to watch their session for a week or 2 or 3 or whenever they're ready. And that's totally welcome too. Other clients, are so excited and want to watch it right away. So it really just depends on where you are, how you receive it. It's always unique. And I've even worked with clients multiple times, and even experiencing just how beautiful and how different the sessions can be, with the same client, with that same person. It's always just different no matter what. So that's something that just calls me to this work as well. But the integration process, like you said, is hugely important. And the recording aspect is so helpful.
What have been some collective messages or themes that have come up recently in sessions that you feel called to share now?
Wow, what a question. Okay, well, something that's been coming up is this concept of this shift, right? So and everyone's, not everyone, but it's been a theme. It's been a theme, right? This shift, this event, this, we hear these phrases sometimes in the spiritual community, but it's coming through in my sessions, just different, the messages of no fear and of unity. But yeah, just there's a shift going on and it is in process.
Yeah.
I guess that's a theme that's just been interesting to show the potential of just such a bright future. Oftentimes my clients are shown these paradise parallel experiences, these beautiful new earth vibes type lifetimes, and how we can absolutely achieve it, right? But we cannot get bogged down by any negative programs, right? And so just so that would be one kind of I guess keeping it as broad as possible, but also collective messages of extraterrestrial contact, right? That's been a big theme. That's something that I just see as a theme with my work. It's become a theme, and we can talk about that, and because it's collective messages too, right? And to have no fear around that, and I feel like it's why I've been called to share my work and not to be afraid and just to talk about all this stuff more, is that we, extraterrestrial beings are not meant to be feared. And just like any being, I mean, there's positive and negative of anything, right? There's duality in everything. And of course, it's about our intention, how we create our realities, or that's one perspective and one way to think about it. But yeah, so another collective message of contact and ways to if you are looking to make contact, or if that's many people are called to these energies, whether it be extraterrestrial or just other higher dimensional, angelic, elemental, whatever beings. And so doing that, doing what you're called to with your intuition, and your discernment is very important, of course. So these are all very basic, I guess, concepts, but sometimes we just need to be reminded.
Do you have any hot takes about spirituality, the wellness world, or your modality in general?
Yeah, sure. The concept of, and the theory of, our spirit guides being other lifetimes that we've lived and other lives that we've lived. And I may have touched on it a little bit and all the things that I've been saying, but just really having that understanding, or just that theory, that concept is so interesting to me, that whether it be spirit guides that we connect with, that we're just called to connect with, or whether it be ones that we connect with in meditation or within a BQH session, just that our spirit guides, and some of us may have heard our spirit guides are ourselves, right? But it's like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean exactly? And so the thought of, just whether it be an angel, or even the concept of an extraterrestrial being, right? So being your spirit guide, but that spirit guide being really another incarnation that you have already experienced. You maybe are experiencing right now, part of your consciousness experiencing it, depending on how you look at parallel and consciousness in general, but just having that concept is just so interesting to me, as spirit guides and these other beings that we may connect with in these meditative spaces, being not necessarily separate from our consciousness, but connected, and having experienced that complete consciousness as that being, just in a different time and space. Because I've also asked, and poked around in sessions with clients and with their approval, of course, that, the concept of some spirit guides maybe not being connected or not having experienced incarnations. So, for example, maybe another spirit guide that is experienced, you haven't lived that incarnation yet, right? And so I've asked questions about that, and that information has come through. So just maybe not all spirit guides are their lifetimes that we live, but some are, So that's something that just a concept that I find to be very interesting. And I wanted to ask you, is that something that you had prior to, talking about it in this setting? Is that something that what are your thoughts on it, I suppose?
So it's interesting you asked that, because when I tune into my spirit guides, I have sat in the power, sat in meditations to be like, okay, spirit guides, give me your names. And like, who are you? And then I've been doing this work for so long, and I still don't know my spirit guides' names. So what I've taken that as is, this is a part of me. And so I have that same relationship that you described, that I don't need to know who they are, what lifetime they came from. I just trust that they're providing me with information. And
absolutely,
when I ask, right, because we have free will. And I do think spirit guides, yes, can be other lifetimes, people that you were connected to. I also believe that your guides could be like a grandparent who crossed over, or a great grandparent. But I also believe that your spirit guides are you.
Definitely. And something that you just said too, that was also very activating for me just now, when you say, sitting in that space and asking for spirit guides' names, right? Or trying, just like asking, like, what are your names, whatever. So that's how all this started for me, really. That's how a lot of this started for me, is I was gifted an energy. I thought it was just like a massage session. My aunt gifted me this session, and turns out it was this like whole, not only was it a, acupressure massage session, but it was Reiki. It was like a soul delivery, it was just everything. And from that session, I started really wanting connection with my guides and the elemental realm, and connecting with those spirit guides. And so I remember a time sitting in our living room. I remember exactly the moment, and sitting in that space. And sometimes you won't hear anything, right? Or you won't sense anything, or you won't receive that information. And for a long time, I didn't. But then one day, whatever I was doing or whatever, boy, did I hear a name, and it was not a name that you normally hear, like so I was like, whoa, like that's not like, oh, Kevin or whatever, like something that you hear on a daily basis, right? It was just such like an ancient sounding name. And so that's how a lot of this sparked my curiosity, right? Because that was so unlike me. I was just like, whoa, like what am I, so. And I think that's interesting too, is that at certain times like of our lives, based on our intentions and where we are in our lives, different spirit guides can come in and be more leaders than others, right? And so I think that is also a point to make with how, sometimes we're not supposed to know their names, and other days you might just be doing something where you're connecting with something and you get a
Yeah.
name. But I will say it definitely has happened to me most when I'm in that dreamlike space or even before bed too. I've had some experiences
Exactly.
before falling asleep that have been pretty interesting as well. So yeah, spirit guides being other lifetimes we've lived is a interesting concept.
Yeah, I love that hot take. Do you have any more? Hot takes are my favorite.
Let's see. Yeah, no, I love this. I love these. Okay, so yes. Another hot take too is that these sessions are done virtually, right? Like, how does that work, right? Or like,
Mm-hmm.
why does that work? Something very important, and I learned this early on in my BQH journey, working with my love, my partner. He, um, he and I were having, I don't even know if it was my first session, if one of the very first sessions that I facilitated, and he his headphones fell out. So we were doing it in person, but his headphones fell out. And I noticed that right when one of his headphones fell out, I thought to myself, oh, well, I'm right here. I'm right next to him. He can hear me. No big deal. Right. No, you need something magical happens hearing the sound of the practitioner's voice within the client's headphones. It's like a deep surround sound, whatever it is. There's something very, very important about that. So that's my hot take, is that there's something very significant about the headphones in this space to help us to achieve this dreamlike state. And in addition, these virtual online sessions, it's my belief that something magical, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's very many things, but I like to say like a certain magic happens with these virtual sessions. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to be in my space fully comfortable. My client is able to be in their space fully comfortable. There's no commuting. They don't have to, even if I had the most luxurious place, the most perfect space, you still have to commute or find a driver, or just like it's so many variables that can create anxiety, can create worry, can create what ifs. The bathroom, even if it's the most luxurious bathroom, you're not familiar with the layout of the place, right? When you're in your own home. So my point is that these virtual sessions almost allow my clients to go even deeper, and just are more comfortable. And so and maybe it has something to do with the energetics of it all and technology. I'm not so sure, but whatever it is, all I know is I'm grateful to have found this certification that allows for this, because it is such beautiful work. And of course, it allows me to reach people all over the world, which I'm so blessed to do, or all over the country. I mean, I've had a international client, I think only one, but so far. But just connecting with people throughout time and space. And sometimes it just does feel like they're in the other room too, or like they're right next to me. It's just so cool, but it's wonderful that they're able to be in their own bed, which is great. So yeah, those are some hot takes I have.
Well, I agree with you on that 100%,
Mhm.
because so many people are like, but I want an in-person session. I'm like, nope, nope.
Yeah.
The magic is there for virtual
Yes.
sessions. People
It's
don't see
so
it.
People aren't there yet, and I understand with certain work, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
If you're a crystal healer, I get it. If you really want to put that crystal on the client's body, or like if you're an acupuncture or acupressurist, or I get it, or even
Yeah.
sound healer too. Like I understand, but even just like playing around, just play around and see how it goes, because you never know what you'll find in this online space, no matter what modality you're practicing, because it is quantum. We are going through time and space. It is all
Mm-hmm.
just in the mind with intention, and clients will feel that their bodies will respond. So many things can be felt, and it's just fantastic. So I'm so glad that you're with me on that one, because at first I'll say, like, the very first online session I ever facilitated, I was just like, in the back of your head, you're like, is this gonna work? Like, and now I'm just like, it's worked every time. Like, how could it not? Like, this is so fantastic. So yeah, it's the option of it. And like you said, I think you said something just now about how you absolutely not, like, you only do online. And I even you know absolutely feel like that now because I tried doing some like in person. I tried like going against that rule, with friends, of course, and just trying. I'm like, dude, I want them to experience this online thing 'cause I swear it's different. You know what I mean? Like the few that I've worked with in person, I'm just like, yeah. Now that I've just really dove into doing these online sessions, I'm like, I want to hear their perspective and see how different the experience is, so yeah, I'm glad that you've been experiencing similar things.
Oh, absolutely. Before we dive into how people can reach out to you, find you, follow along with your work, and how they can book a session with you, I do have a couple questions for you, just kind of like super fast, fly through them. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Tarot cards or oracle cards?
For me, I work with oracle cards a lot more, but I love the origins of tarot and the story, just the ancient origins of all of it, but of tarot specifically. So for me, it's hard to pick. I work with oracle a lot more, but I am fascinated by tarot. Is that a good answer?
Yes, that's perfect. Whatever you answer is the perfect
Okay, cool. I didn't know if there are any rules. I had to pick one. Okay.
Human design or astrology?
Gosh, these are hard, man.
I know.
I don't know. I have friends that are masters of both who teach me so much. I'll say this, I've had more astrology readings, not much more, but I have had more astrology readings than I have had human design. And so for that reason, I say astrology, just because I know more about it. However, human design absolutely fascinates me. And both modalities are just stupendous. And I want to know more about both. But astrology, if I had to pick.
ETs or elementals?
Oh, God. How can I choose? This is like, it's so hardcore.
It's unfair.
Because it's like, okay, well, the fairies and elementals and all of that energy has been with me my whole life. Activated me on that, like I told you, that session that I had that activated me to connect with my guides. It was elemental guides. So for me, they're one and the same. They can be considered one and the same. And I've had that come through in sessions, even a session I had with my mom. So I can talk about it because she says I could talk about all of the goodness that comes through in sessions we have together. But yeah, she had a fairy guide that was from the stars. So, I say both, and I say elementals from the cosmos, from extraterrestrial places. But also too, I think that elementals were shown to me first. I've been spoon-fed, little things, right? Dolores says we're spoon-fed these things on our journeys. So for me, I was spoon-fed elementals first to dive in. And then once I discovered the whole ET cosmic thing, I was fascinated. And I do believe that there are overlaps and well, that's a whole nother conversation, just the origins of all that. That could be a whole podcast we could do in and of itself.
Totally could be.
But yeah. But they're the same to me. That's my answer.
I love that.
Yeah.
What is the biggest lesson you've learned on your journey?
So many, but one that comes to mind is passions. Like I said before, and what defines me as a spiritual, being or practitioner, what we covered at the start is following your passions, following your callings. And going back to what resonated with you as a child, like I said, that childlike wonder, essence, and energy, what makes your heart sing. And I know sometimes, we get in the habit with social media and just life and programming and whatever of, comparing ourselves to other people and like, what's that person doing? And like, what's working for them and all that. And it's like, no, like eliminate all that, like what works for you and like everyone's journey is different, but what it makes you happy and filled with so much joy, do that thing. And no matter if society says, oh, that's not possible and you can't make money to do that or whatever, there is a way. And the mind is so strong. So, don't let anyone make you think that you can't, because you can, so that's what I'd say on that.
Let this also be the reminder that comparison is the thief of joy. So stop comparing yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself. are you better than where you were yesterday? How can you increase your life? Just make it 1% better or 2% better or whatever.
Totally, completely. And that's something too, like compare yourself to yourself. Like that's a little, I don't know where I developed that, but that's one little thing that like I've always, since I was a kid, I was never hyper competitive, like unless there was like a great prize and I'm like, ooh, I want
Hell
that
yeah.
prize or whatever it is. So if we're not competing, well, 'cause people who compete just to compete, there's probably so much growth and fantastic things that happen for that, but that's just not the way I was programmed. So I've always, that's been my little phrase, like just compare yourself to yourself, and just move forward that way. So yeah, I'm so glad that you said that.
Very last question for you, Lily. How do you create consciousness every day?
Well, definitely with the work that I do, right? I'm always, uh, like I say, I suppose connecting with consciousness, but in terms of creating consciousness, I love to create, I guess content as well as art. I allow my consciousness, I suppose, to be expressed through art that I create. And so I've been working on some digital art pieces for a while. I wasn't creating any art and just feeling such a void in that. But yeah, and I'll bring it kind of coming full circle again, right back to the art thing of how I found all this and how it goes back to that is that's how I love creating and I create consciousness too, like just within my own mind. I feel like we all do. We're always throughout our whole days. Where I was listening to some video or podcast that was speaking of something like this, that we're all creating our own consciousness in our own minds every day. We're having conversations with ourselves, as we think. That's what thought is, right? It is
Exactly.
consciousness and creating it. So I'm constantly pondering and researching all of these concepts that I post about or I'm just starting to talk about. And I suppose I create consciousness within my own vessel with the research that I do. I'm forever a researcher, forever an explorer. I love ancient history, ancient traditions, ancient origins. I've always been, as a kid, interested in ancient origin stories of how the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians, how did they interpret the origins of fire, just how they just interpreted the origins of so many things. So those are some ways I like to, I guess, create consciousness in my own life of allowing myself to explore and forever explore.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you. Thank you so much for just all of your gifts and all that you share. And I can't tell you like how many of, videos or content and things that you've shared that have absolutely inspired me and made me, less fearful to share. And just, you're so inspiring and so eloquent, and just everything that you create resonates with me. And it feels like I've known you before. And I just, yes, everything, all the things, you're it.
I love you so much. Thank you.
I love you too.
I receive, and I feel the exact same way about you. So
thank you.
How can people get connected with you? How can people book a session with you? How can they stay in touch?
Yes, absolutely. So everything on all social media, I'm at The Quantum Guide. So THE Quantum Guide. And my website, thequantumguide.com. So I'm super simple. YouTube channel, The Quantum Guide. And to book a session with me, you can either reach out to me on Instagram. That's the easiest way to interact with me quickly. I'm always on there. So send me a message. I can send you some links, or go to the link in my bio. It'll take you to my website, different links there. But yeah, thequantumguide.com is where you can book directly on my website. I have 2 different length sessions. So I have a micro session, a shorter version, and a longer full length session. I also have consultation calls if you're just wanting to kind of talk to me a little more, find out what this is all about, and also working on some other offerings as well. So be sure you're following me on all social media so that when I continually offer and launch these new things, you can be receiving them as well. And also, if anyone who's listening to this is ever curious about becoming a BQH practitioner, I also have an affiliate code too, as well. So feel free to reach out to me. It'll get you 10% off of the course. So those are the things that I have going on and how you can reach me, how you can book with me. But yeah, also email to thequantumguide@gmail.com.
Excellent. We will go ahead and link all of that information in the show notes. Lily's Instagram, website, her YouTube, as well as I'll have her give me that code so we can link the code for the
Thank you.
BQH
Thank you
course
so
in the show
much.
notes as well. And they'll be in the show notes when you view the episode. They will also be on my website with the complete full show notes that breaks things down into minutes and seconds so you can tune into little parts. You don't have to listen to the whole episode. And that will always be found on my website under the Blogger Journal tab. And with that, Lily, this has been such a joy, such a pleasure. And I thank you so much for sharing your time and energy with me and the Creating Consciousness listeners today.
Thank you so much. I feel the same way. This has been a dream and so healing for me as well. So love you so much and can't wait to connect again.
Conscious creators, that is today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this episode wherever you're listening. And if you really took something away from it, please don't hesitate to share with a friend, because not only does sharing this podcast with a friend help the podcast grow, but it also helps vibrate and send out the collective message of healing. And that is something that is so freaking important. If you're looking to stay in touch with Lily, please head to the show notes. There are also some freebies for me linked in there as well, and I know you are going to love them. I will be back next week with a new episode for you, but in the meantime, remember, you are loved. You are supported. You are divinely guided. And you are creating consciousness. Until next time, conscious creators.